Well, hello, avid readers. I know you are going to love today's guest and this book. It's such an amazing story, which we'll get into in a minute with so much research into it. But my guest today is Donna Wichelman, and we're going to be talking about her book, A Song of Deliverance. It's book one in the Singing Silver Mine series. So, first of all, Donna, welcome. And why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, Tricia, first, let me thank you for having me on your podcast. It's very exciting to be here with you. And I'm just very thrilled to talk to your audience and tell them a little bit about myself.
Yes.
Um, so I have been writing for a very long time, and this is my first traditionally published book. I do have two indie published books in my Waldensian series. Those are from about 8 or 10 years ago. But this is the first time that a publisher has offered me a contract. And so it's thrilling that I've joined that world of being a published author. But yeah, so I decided that I wanted a number of years back. I had difficulty determining what is it really. Why do I write? What
Mm,
is it that I really get jazzed about? And it actually became one of those things where I suddenly realized that everything I loved to read was either historical fiction or romance.
yes.
And so I realized that that was my brand, was historical romance. Um, and so my tagline is weaving history and faith into tales of intrigue and redemption. And
Mm.
so that is what I strive for in my novels is to, it's a, the story itself is not just about the rags to riches, which we will talk about in a minute or so, but it's about, and what I strive to do with all of my stories is to um, make it about how God intervenes in the most difficult times of our lives and will continue to do so. And so that's really the, you'll see that theme running through all of my books from here on and in the future.
And I love that so much. When we have faith, we can, people maybe won't go to church or they might, feel like, God, how can you let so many hard things happen in my life? But then they pick up a novel and they could have those threads of redemption and God's goodness, even during very difficult times. So I would love to hear like what sparked the idea for A Song of Deliverance specifically and why set it in Colorado during the silver mining boom.
Yeah. So actually, um, my husband we work for a Hewlett Packard company. And years ago, he worked with a team in Ireland. So he went over quite frequently, and occasionally I went with him. So in 2009, the very first time we went on a actual vacation through Ireland, were on the Dingle Peninsula, and it is just such it's a remote, beautifully remote area of Ireland if you've ever been there.
I
And
haven't. I would love to someday though. Yes.
well, and because my husband worked with these people at Hewlett Packard, we got to know the country a little bit more than maybe just your average tourist.
Yes.
And so then we went back in the summer of 2018, actually, after he no longer worked for the company, but we brought my daughter and son in law along with us. And we were standing on a crest overlooking the Atlantic Ocean on the Dingle Peninsula. And my mind went towards this idea of a, this poor Irish woman with no dowry,
Mm.
nothing to recommend herself to any well-established man, and so she would be destined to immigrate to America. And so that was that inspiration on that, crest overlooking the
Yes.
Atlantic Ocean. And then I had to come home and flesh out what that would look like in a story. And so the initial story began in Ireland, but I was directed by one of my mentors, Amanda Cabot, whom you may know.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes. And she suggested that it really start in Colorado.
Mhm.
So I took the prologue and I set it aside and I started the book in Colorado. But it has a very Irish feel to it the entire way, because, of course, she is Irish and she has an Irish accent. And, she flashes back from time to time when she did live in Ireland and her life there.
Yeah, I love it, and, Anna is the character, and she's such a strong and compassionate lead, and I love that. And, we think about we have Irish immigrants, read stories. On my grandpa's side, there's part of his family came from Ireland, from County Cork, Ireland, and it's easy, like, "Oh, cool, my genealogy, there's another sliver of color in here." But then to really think about what people went through and their experiences. So let's talk about Anna for a minute. So was she
Yes. Mhm.
inspired by someone real or personal to you, or did she just come out of your imagination?
Honestly, she came out of my imagination. There are other characters in the book that actually were inspired by
Hmm.
real people in Colorado, particularly a woman who was a formerly enslaved person who figures prominently in the book. She's
Yeah.
also Anna's mentor, but Anna herself, no, she is totally imagined in my psyche somehow.
Well, she seems very real for being imagined in your psyche. And then we have Stephen. Do you pronounce it Stephen?
Stefan.
Stefan. I'm like, I'm wondering. There's like an F in there. Okay, Stefan. Um, so he's complex and grieving and noble. So how did you build his character and then also tie in this emotional journey? Because you have strength, but then the emotional part of him too.
Yeah, so I knew from the beginning that Anna would be a poor Irish immigrant with no dowry, no chance of marrying the man that she loved. Um, and so that set the stage for why she accepted her uncle's invitation to Colorado.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I also knew that I wanted the love interest to be totally opposite to her. I wanted him to be rich, with a legacy, also European nobility, because
Hmm.
that would be she would be uh, just the prejudice would go both ways,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right? Because and also because he was English, so part German, part English. Um, he also starts out on the wrong side of her of her she goes on his she gets on I'm sorry, he gets on her wrong side
Yes.
by being English, because the English were not exactly appreciated in Ireland during the 19th century. And so she was already prejudiced against him from the get-go. um, but then, because of this conflict of class interest, then it makes for a much more interesting story about class conflict and the differences in their social worlds.
Yeah, and so it's almost well, the trope is enemies to lovers, but this is Christian clean fiction, so it's not enemies to lovers, it's enemies to romantic interests, I guess we could say.
Yes,
Um,
exactly right.
yeah, and so we have the big themes. We have immigration, like you mentioned. We have class. We have labor struggles, which I find myself when I'm working, I could get so wrapped up in that I'm like, "Oh, wait, we're supposed to have a romance here." So how
Yes.
is that balancing that for you when there's these great big themes, which I found so interesting, to then also building on the romance?
Yeah, so because they actually have something very, much in common, which is
Mhm.
they are both grieving.
Mhm.
Stefan has lost his wife, uh, coming over to America. She died at sea, and she has lost the love of her life in Ireland. And so, because of that, they find something together that they can identify with, right? And so, um, and because one of the reasons why he has come to America is to come over on his own to get away from those class differences. He likes the American independence, the
Mhm.
ability to create something on your own. And so for both of them, they're having to create a life for themselves in a place that is not their original homeland.
Yes. Yeah.
So together, they really discover something about God's working out of their lives in a place where they never would have imagined that would happen.
Yeah. Okay, so good. Okay, so how deep did you go into research, talking about the mining life and the immigrants in those communities in the 1870s in Colorado? I
Mm.
wasn't even aware. I mean, I've been to Nevada, Virginia City, the silver mines there, went to the graveyard, walking around. I mean, there's so many immigrants there. And I was like, oh, Colorado. I love when you find a new place and
Mhm.
information, that's in the story. So how did you go about researching for that?
Well, so because we live in Colorado,
Mhm.
and during the time that my daughter was still growing up, we would go to Georgetown actually quite frequently,
Oh,
believe it or
wow.
not, because the Georgetown Loop Railroad still a little bit over a mile of steam of narrow gauge steam engine track that that still exists there, and a mine that you can tour through. We would do that several summers in a
Okay.
row. Yeah, and so I already knew about Georgetown. I already knew a little bit of the history. I knew there was a big Irish community there that came west, partly because they were not necessarily accepted on the
Yes.
East Coast,
Yeah.
right? We had that no Irish need apply uh, era, that the Irish were really not accepted, just like many immigrants,
Yes. Mhm.
they have a hard time making their way into the community. So they came out west, and they worked in the mines because it was a place where everybody was an
Mm.
immigrant, so to speak. And so so what I did with all of this is, because I already knew a little bit of the history, it was easy enough for me to continue to look into that. But the difficulty was, she gets to Georgetown and discovers that a mining accident has occurred,
Yes.
really a disaster, and her uncle is killed. And now she has to, create this life for herself. But in my research, I had to figure out what kind of mining disaster would occur that would cause
Mhm.
a dozen men to be killed in the belly of the earth. So I had to do all this research and mining and figure out how that would work out, and how in the end they could figure out who the culprit was that
Mhm,
caused the
mhm.
disaster. So that required a lot of research. It also led me to some mining law that was established in 1872. And part of that mining law was called the Apex Law, or the Extralateral Rights Law. And that said that if a mine owner's property, if the silver vein started at the apex in their property, but it ended up in your neighboring property, you actually still owned the rights to that
Oh,
vein.
wow. Yeah.
And you can imagine, and actually that law is still on the books today.
Oh, wow.
You can imagine the disputes. Who
Mhm.
owns that silver vein or that gold vein? Because it's in at the apex is in this property and it continues into the other property.
Mm.
And so there was actually a real case called the Pelican Dives case, where this actually happened in
Wow.
Georgetown. Two mining entities that were at war with one another,
Mm.
trying to determine, and to be honest with you, it took almost a decade before they could resolve it. And so I used this Pelican Dives case to develop what happened in the book to cause the mining accident.
Yeah, so interesting. Okay, so many fun things. Okay, and but we you have side characters too. You've
Yes.
already mentioned one of them. Who was your favorite side character? Because sometimes these people just show up. And then my second question to that: Are some of these people going to show up in book two? So
Yes.
that's what I want to know.
Yes.
Okay, so who's your
Yes.
favorite first? Tell us who your favorite is, and then maybe give us a hint who might be showing up in book two.
um, so I will say that a number of the characters from book one show up in book two.
Oh, good. Okay.
They do. And because everyone loves Anna. That's
Hmm.
I've
Hmm.
heard that over and over again. Everyone loves Anna, so she has to show up in book two, and so do all those the women who
Yeah.
are part of that clan of women who do the tea together and all of that. Um, so most of them do appear, and they have to, but um, the the my favorite character actually in the book, believe it or not, is Cecilia Richards.
Oh.
And she is one of those people whose character I used, a real life character I used, who was a formerly enslaved woman, but she was actually freed before the Civil
Mhm,
War by
mhm.
her last owner. It was stipulated in his will that she would be freed, and he gave her a certain amount of money to start her life with. So her name is Clara Brown. The real life person is Clara Brown, and she's actually recognized here in Colorado as the first African American business owner uh, in Colorado.
Wow!
Yes. And so that's not true of Cecilia Richards, my character,
Mhm.
but they have a lot in common.
Yeah.
And because I fell in love with Clara Brown's story, I wanted to include her in the book. And she is a lovable character. She's sweet, but she's got a sense of humor. And in that one scene where she kind of dances around after they this fundraiser, they find out they made a lot of money at this fundraiser, and so she's just a very lovable character, and I think besides Anna, probably most people will like Cecilia Richards, maybe
Yeah.
more than anyone else, even Stefan.
Yeah. And those we
Although
have those
Stefan's a pretty good guy too in the end.
we just have those lovable characters that just are so memorable. Oh, I love
Mhm.
that. Okay, so talk about Bible verses or themes that really guided you with writing. Did you have specific ones that really stood out to you when you were working on the book?
Yeah, so during the time that I was actually in the final edits of the book, I had a Bible verse, and you may know Jean Burgess.
Mhm.
She's a publicist, and so
Yep.
she she was helping me a little bit along the way here and there. Um, and she had some personal crises of her own.
Mhm.
And it had happened that while I was doing the final edits on the book, that I had had a shoulder replacement surgery that had gone very wrong,
Mm,
and
wow.
stress fracture. And I felt just like my world was crashing down around me. But obviously, I have two shoulders now, and everything eventually worked out. But the verse that Jean gave to me, and the one that I think is probably my theme verse for my life, and that I I would go to at any point in my life when it just felt like things were falling apart.
Mhm, mhm.
And this verse actually comes as part of the dedication at the beginning of the book. So I wrote the dedication this way: to anyone who has faced unexpected tragedy and found the courage to trust God, even in the most profoundly difficult circumstances. And then here's the Bible verse: may the God of hope fill you with
Mhm.
all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit you may abound in hope. And that is Romans 15:13.
Yeah.
And, you know, when as I mentioned at the beginning, when sometimes life seems like it's handing you rotten tomatoes, sometimes, it's difficult to see above it.
Mhm.
But if we just remember that God is always in those circumstances, and that He is not going to leave you or forsake you, and He is always going to provide for you, then we can say, well, you know what? I have this hope inside of me that no matter what happens, God still is going to work all things together for the good. And so that's
Yeah.
where I again, like I mentioned earlier, that's kind of the theme that's you'll always see running through my books.
I love that, and it just reminds me of that verse, "Comfort those as you have been comforted." And it's hard to go through hard things in our lives, but I love that you received that verse and you're passing it on to readers at the beginning, but also throughout the story,
Mm.
that we could just have that hope. Okay, so I have to ask, when is book 2 gonna come out, and what can we look forward to concerning book 2? Do you have a title or anything that
Yeah,
you could
yeah.
share? I know sometimes people can't, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, book two will come out in early December, and we can look forward to seeing some of the cast of characters that were in
Mhm.
book one, definitely, and they will add their 2 cents to the problems that are taking place in Georgetown in 1877. In the book, we never see her, but Pastor Clinton Thomas and his wife Laurel are in book one. And there's one scene where Anna she doesn't, because she's mourning, she's in these widow's weeds, as they call
Mhm.
it. Um, but she does not have a ball gown, and the harvest ball is coming up. And she kind of ends up being feeling like she's a Cinderella because Laurel's daughter's ball gown it has been packed away in their belongings. And so Cassie Monroe is her name. She will be the protagonist in book
Oh,
two.
great.
um, and then we have a doctor who will be her love interest from Philadelphia. So she comes to Georgetown from Ohio, and he's from Philadelphia, and there'll be some interesting things happening between the two of them.
Oh, that's something that we could definitely be looking forward to. And again, the book is A Song of Deliverance. So, Donna, where can people go to find more information about you and your books?
So you can go to my website at www.donnawickelman.com and or go to the Amazon page where A Song of Deliverance is there. Just look me up, Donna Wickelman, and A Song of Deliverance.
And read
Um,
all the gushing reviews. You had so many wonderful reviews. So that's awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting that, especially the fact that the research is a lot of what people have commented on,
Mhm.
and that is important to me. That the research is authentic and
Yes.
that
Mhm.
we get right,
Yes.
because this is historical fiction, yes, but it also has to be something that we can see is real,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Donna, so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much, Trisha. I really enjoyed my time with you, and thank you so much for having me on your show.
It was great having you.